Hi, good afternoon. My name is Reynaldo J. Aguiar Marcano. Excuse me. And today is November 17th, 2025, and it's about 4:45 p.m. US Central Time. And I'm recording this video from my home located at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. And this house is located, I'm going to give you a geographical reference of the location, and this is important. It's located just in front of the house of a gentleman by the name Joel Great, who is the chief financial officer of Baxter International. And he was, before that, he was the executive vice president of Cisco, the food logistic company. This house is also located next to the 2310 Britton Ridge Drive, which is the house of another gentleman by the name of John Miko, or Miko, Miko. And he is, a mid to higher level employee of Cisco, the same food distribution company. Um, and all the houses of the three of us, I mean, me and the two Cisco former or current employees, are 300 feet away from the house of another gentleman by the name of Robert Mueller, who was the director of the FBI for several years, many years ago. And all these, relative locations are important for the things that I'm going to mention in this demo. Let me just look up real quickly what is the number of this demo to make sure that yeah, so this would be demo 90. So D90, okay? Delta 90. It's important to keep things organized. So for this demo, I have, my goal with this demo is to talk about a series of events that have happened in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 days, okay? It feels like a pivotal moment in the conflict. And the reason why I haven't posted anything about this is because I've been waiting, right, for the information to like kind of simmer in my mind. At this point in my life, I can tell when something is not fully formed in my head. But it's one of these cases where I feel, I mean, there's so much to learn from this. I feel like I have so much to learn tactically from this sequence of events that it would take several days for me to really understand it. And because time is at prime, I'm not going to wait that long. So that's why I'm, I haven't posted anything about this, but I feel like I should, right? So I have a list of talking points that let me share my screen with you. Let's just start by that. Okay, so let's just start by talking about the recent events, right? So to catch people up, right, in case anybody is not familiar with what happened before, there's been a couple of important events that have happened that in the last 8 months, right, that led us to this point. So the first event was on March 27th, right? I have shown this video before, but I'm gonna play it for you here. You can see in this video, in this corner, let me start playing it. I don't know if you can see in this corner over here, this is like a flashing light. You see the light, right? It's like blinking. That device that is blinking in the video is installed on the behind the windshield of the car and on the back of the rear view mirror. And this is discussed in another demo and in the books. What and this was March 27, 2025. This video was recorded by my cameras in front of my home. Okay, so this is my driveway, and this is my car. I paid for that car. Okay, it's the Tesla Model S, and the car was parked pointing to the house of Joel Gray. That's why it's important to mention the houses that are around. Okay, when I see this on March 27, I immediately posted it on YouTube, and the next day my son was taken. Right, of course, at that time I didn't understand that this was the reason, but I believe today that the reason why my son was removed from the home on March 28 was because I posted this video on YouTube, and this video is pretty incriminating because it's physical, tangible evidence of a surveillance device installed in my vehicle transmitting information encoded using infrared. That light, it's not visible with the naked eye, and I can tell you that because that night I went outside and I was doing something, outside in that area, and I did not see this flashing light. Right, so I know that this is infrared. So that's the first event. Okay. Now fast forward, I don't know, 7, 8 months, and the next event that happened was on November. I mean, there's many things that have happened, but related to this infrared communication technique. The second event was on November 16th, so just 2 days ago, right? Today is 17, just yesterday. This was yesterday at 6 a.m. Another camera that I have, you can see the angle is different. So in the previous video I showed you, the Tesla was parked where I'm moving the mouse right now. So on the left side of the screen, that's where the Tesla was parked. And it was pointing, you can see that very clearly, to the house of Joel Gray, which is this house that you see on the background on this frame, right? On the left, where I'm pointing with the mouse. And the car was pointing to a point that is located a little bit left to the main entrance, right? Because I measured the angles, right? After I saw what was happening. So I'm giving all that context before I show you this other video from November 16th, right? So just yesterday in the morning. So what happened was yesterday I logged into Vanguard.com, and I haven't logged into Vanguard.com, and I'll give you more details about why I logged in and why I haven't logged in a while. But as soon as I logged in, within 60 seconds, what I'm going to show you started happening. So I'm going to play the video now. So you see, so this is the house, 2310 Return Ridge Drive, doing exactly the same thing that the Tesla vehicle was doing on March 27th. But this is more serious because the car, it's incriminating for Joel Gray, but you can think that the other party that was transmitting the information could be a hacker in China, right? Like it's some obscure figure that is nameless, right? But this is more serious because this is the house next door to him, next door to me and in front of him, right? And that house has an owner whose name is John Miko or Michael, right? Who is also an employee of Cisco, the food logistic company, the same as Joel Gray was not too long ago. So this is way more incriminating than the previous video I showed you, because this is not some faceless hacker in China. This is an individual that owns property and land here in the US. Right? So this is the second event, right? Now let me pause here for a second, because this also tells me other things, right? And this is a hypothesis, right? What I'm going to tell you, it's a bit more technical, okay? It's a hypothesis. I can't prove it, but just give it just 1 second. Just 1 second, please. Okay, hello, I'm back. Sorry. Yes. Okay, so I was saying that this is a theory, right? So remember, the setup is that I was the situation, right, was that I was working on the computer using a satellite connection, and it is important to show you where the antenna is because it's relevant to what I'm going to say. This is a Viasat, and that is also relevant, internet connection. So this is the situation right here, right? So this is my house, the one where I'm pointing the mouse, where I open this model window. This is the house of John Miko, or Miko, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly. And this is the house of Joel Gray. Right? So these are the three houses that I'm talking about. So my Viasat antenna is located more or less on these coordinates, right? And it's pointing. Let me show you what it's pointing. Okay. So my antenna is more or less around here, right? My Viasat antenna. Okay. And it is pointing. Let me see if I can do another. The uplink is pointing on this direction. Okay. And let me make another line. I'm sorry, I'm doing this live here, but it's I think it's important to go through this geometry, right? And this would be, imagine for a second that this is the equator, okay? So the Earth is rotating on that direction, right? And this is important. So it's important because when the satellite beams down any response to my internet traffic, the Earth is rotating, right? So whatever is beamed down is going to spill to anything that is on either side, right, of that rotation, right? Because the satellite doesn't know exactly. The satellite beams down, and as the Earth rotates, the signal is going to spill naturally to the sides, right? Because the Earth is rotating. But the uplink is this red. Let me see if I can increase the size of this to see better. Yes. So the uplink is pointing on this direction where the red arrow is, and so to the backyard of John Miko, right? And he has a bouncy house. I don't know what to call it. It's not a bouncy, it's like a playground for kids. Something I don't know what to call that. It's like a slide. Like it's a taller slide. It's a structure that is made supposedly of wood. And it's a tall structure, and it has kind of a slide, right, for children to play. But there's never children in that backyard play, right? And that structure is located. I'm going to put it here. It's located more or less around here. Okay. So that is the geometry of the situation, and the transmission of the flashing light that you just saw was happening between supposedly front yard reflector that John Miko has on his front porch, and sorry. I don't know how to undo that though. I made a mistake and I don't know how to undo it. So that blue box that I draw, I didn't mean to draw that to draw that, but ignore that box for a second. What I want to do is really an arrow. Okay, so that light that you saw in the video was transmitted on this direction. Okay, and the light that you saw on the Tesla video was transmitting on this direction. Okay. So that is the setup of the geometry of the things in this area. Okay. For what I want to talk about. So what happened was I logged in to Vanguard.com to my account, and I haven't done that in months. Within 60 seconds, the house of Joel Gray started transmitting to the house. Sorry, the house of John Miko started transmitting to the house of Joel Gray. So my hypothesis, and this is why I'm saying I can't prove it, right? Because I cannot go into the backyard and check what they have in there. But my hypothesis is that John Miko is sniffing the uplink of my satellite antenna with something that he has in that slider thing, that structure that is taller than my fence. That's why it's taller, because it needs to be able to see what is transmitting from my antenna to the satellite. Once he gets the transmission, right, he can see the MAC address. And then what he was doing was, and this is a hypothesis, I can prove it, but I think is he was sending the MAC address to the house of Joel Gray. And the reason is because then the house of Joel Gray would send it to either via NFC or via infrared, right? That I can't see because my cameras are not pointing in that direction. I mean, my camera doesn't have visibility into the device that is emitting the infrared light because of the angle, right? If this is what they're doing. But then he would basically say, and this is the part that I'm not sure about, right? The rest I'm sure about. What I'm not sure about is this. But it's a hypothesis that seems logical to me. That then Joel Gray would send that information to the house of these other agents, right? And let me tell you the name of that agent. So if you go to I have this Google slide that I'm working on, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But there is a link in that has this directory that Phil Denning gave everybody with the real names of all the agents, right? So that address is so we can ask the question to Gemini here, who lives in this directory that Phil Denning gave us, right? Who lives at and on what page are they? This is Gary and Diane Gray, and they are on page 8. So let's see that, right? I don't see them though. No, there's something wrong here. 1 second. It's 24919. Oh yes, they're here. They're right below Joel Gray. Okay. And the email addresses are just generic email addresses. Okay, so we can see the company name. But anyhow, the hypothesis is, right, that oh no, I made a mistake. The bouncy, the slider. So it's not. Well, I mean, they probably have something in this backyard too, right? That house is marking the index and everything. Oh, actually, this makes more sense. I understand now how it works. Okay, so yeah, so probably it's this, right? The slider that he has is located here. The slide, like the slide for kids, is located here. So the hypothesis is that he gets the uplink MAC address and he sends it via infrared to Joel Gray. And I imagine that the house at 2318 Britton Ridge Drive, which is also controlled by the network, at one point the man of that house made a false police report. Uh, and he took pictures of my cameras. It was like I have all this recorded, right? And then, but I imagine they would do the same, right? I don't have a video of him doing this, but the logic tells me that if they're doing this between Miko and Gray, they must be doing this between Gray and, let me tell you what is the name of that agent. So that would be 2318 Britton Ridge Drive. Okay, so this is Ejaz and Nusat Khan Ahmed. So the names, I don't mean to profile people, but the names sound like Middle Eastern to me, right? And there's multiple incidents with that house, like, and with the Grays, the house that is in front of that house, like they are recorded hundreds of times intercepting my cell phone. Like, and I have logs of me turning on the cell phone, and I have the recording of them coming out of the driveway to intercept it, right? With a statistical significance correlation. So it's not, I'm not guessing, right? Like I know they are working actively every day on this, right? I mean, this is their job. This is their main job, right? To intercept the signals, like from my home. So I'm guessing, right, based on all that information, that what they're doing is that they also have a link between, let's make that link here so it's visible. It would be an arrow, right? So they probably have another link coming in this direction, right? So either way, right? So maybe they're routing the MAC address to Joel Gray, and then Joel Gray sends it to the other, right? But that would be more risky because I could catch a reflection with the cameras, right? Still, even if I don't have the angle of view, something could reflect and let me see it. It would be safer to do it through the 2318. But the purpose of all this, which I haven't said, is so they have the MAC address, so the antennas that they have on their properties can listen to what is coming down from the Viasat satellite to that MAC address, right? And that way they capture the byte stream, and then it gets shipped, I imagine, to China or Russia, or I don't know where, right? Maybe to Robert Mueller's house, I don't know. And then in some place where they have computing power, it gets brute force, right? So they can decrypt it. Why I think this way? Well, because if John Miko had, geometrically speaking, right, if he had everything that is needed to get the downlink, because what they want is a downlink. They want to see what information I'm receiving, right, for two reasons. One, to get the cookies so they can impersonate my account and do something like delete data or delete a video that is too damaging to them. And the second reason is to see if anybody is passing me information, right? To see if they can locate the informant that is mortifying Diosdado Cabello. So that's the reason, right? That's the motivation. That's the why they're doing this, right? But this is an example of that thing that I described in one of the demos about the laws of nature, right? The thing that they can't escape are the laws of nature. Why? Well, because the only way to get the downlink is to be positioned in a place that aligns on latitude with my house, right? With my antenna. Because as the Earth rotates, the signal will naturally spill, right? And they will be able to get it. So that's why it's important. That's why I think the prime candidate that can really get the downlink with high confidence is the Grace at the 24919 GLA court. Right. I think Joel Gray can also get it because of the geometry, right? Of where my antenna is located. It's possible he can get it with something in his backyard, right? So I have to run the numbers, right, to see where that thing could be located. At this point, right, with everything I have learned, I can figure out with good precision where the thing would be located, right? It cannot be anywhere. It has to be in a specific set of places that could make this possible. Based on, I mean, and this is just geometry, right? Based on the actual location, the precise location of my antenna, and the latitude in which we are all located, because that affects the angle of the rotation, because the Earth is not straight, right? It rotates on a tilted axis, right? So based on that angle, and which depends really on the latitude in which we're at, it is possible to compute what are possible, and how wide the beam is, right? And I know how wide it is because of measurements that I've taken. So it is possible for me to compute more or less where the device would be located, right? And I don't have to look with the drone everywhere. I know where I could compute where I would need to look. But again, as I mentioned before, this network uses the roofs as antennas. So, it's possible that the entire house, the entire roof is an antenna. So anyhow, I'm describing the geometry and the technical challenges that they are facing. So I can convey to anybody who watches this video how the thing that they're doing works. But anyhow, the important development beyond the technical part of it, I'm going to. Oh, I saw how to delete the line. Let me try that, just out of curiosity, if I can. Oh, yes, I can touch something and delete it. Nice. Okay. Okay. So the important development, really, beyond the technical, I mean, this is just interesting to me because I'm a technical-minded person. But the interesting thing is seeing the thing recorded in video, right? Seeing this transmission happening from the house of one Cisco employee to the house of another Cisco employee. And this is Cisco with S, right? The food logistics company, this one. Right? Right. So so that's the recent development, right? So now this is this is more me thinking out loud, but this is one of those things where I think I need to think about this deeper to understand really the tactical implications, right? Because think about it for a second, right? So remember what I said at the beginning, right? At the beginning I said that this other instance, right, that happened on March 27th, and before I say this, let me tell you, right, I think it's very telling that there's two recorded videos of two different objects transmitting infrared signals to Joel Gray's house. Because, if it's the Tesla alone, their lawyer could make the argument, well, maybe the Tesla is a Chinese espionage machine, but that doesn't mean that Joel Gray is in it, right? Like maybe the car was parked there and it happened to be transmitting and it was an accident that the transmission hit his home, right? I mean, that argument could be made. But I mean, now there's two, right? There's two instances of two different objects, property of two different people, both of them transmitting to Joel Gray's house. I mean, in statistics, right, that we call that the combined probability, right? What is the probability of two events that are supposedly independent coexisting together? And the probability of two events is way smaller than the probability of a single event, right? Like think about it in practical terms. If you flip a coin, what is the chance that you're going to get heads? It's 50%. But if you flip the coin twice, right, two different coins of the same size and the same weights, like all conditions being equal, the probability of getting two heads is way smaller than the probability of getting just one head, right? So what are the chances that two different objects, one is a Tesla and the other one is a real estate property, both of them transmitting infrared signals to the exact same point in Joel Gray's house, because they could have been transmitted to two different points, right? The Tesla could have been transmitted to the I don't know, the west side of the house, and the other to the left. No, but both objects were transmitting to the same thing, because that's where he has the receptor, right? The receptor that is able to get this infrared transmission and decode it, right? Uh, but this is on itself one of those instances where, yeah, I think this has huge implications, right? Tactically and legally. Because think about it for a second, right? On March 27, I got this recording, and if you see this recording, the one that is on the screen right now, and I'm thinking about the legal angle, right? From a legal point of view, I mean, it can be demonstrated that, because the geometry and the placement of the car, with a little bit of math, it could be demonstrated that it's pointing to Joel Gray's house. But in reality, Joel Gray's house is not in the frame, right? So the lawyer defending Joel Gray could make the argument, the series of legal arguments to, say that this cannot be used in court, right? Procedurally, like, not because it's not true, because as I mentioned before, their lawyers don't fight on the merits of the issues; they fight on the procedures. So a lawyer could make an objection based on some procedural rule that could allow a judge to say this exhibit is out, this evidence cannot be used, right? So that could happen, right? But the thought that I have is that if this video that I'm showing you right now, that could be tossed out by a judge using procedural rules, right, triggered the removal of my son in less than 12 hours, right? So that means that this produced panic on them, right? This video that could be legally challenged, right? Imagine the psychological effect that it would have on them, this other video, right? That this cannot be challenged. You can see the two houses, you can see the infrared, you can see the point where it's hitting the house, which is the point that I described in the books months ago, right? It's the same point. I mean, it's not like I'm thinking about this right now. I mentioned all this in the books. It's a printed book, and it's been printed for months. So this is a way harder to challenge. This is a video that is way harder to challenge, legally speaking, right? So like that led to the thought that maybe when Robert Mueller and the network made the decision to remove my son from the home, maybe that was a premature decision. They should have waited until this moment, right? I mean, to have that bullet in this moment would be a better use of that bullet. But they spent it months ago, and they spent it in vain because it got nowhere, right? I mean, the whole sequence of taking the child was to, the main idea, right, of taking the child was to create this sham proceeding on the 387th court to justify creating a temporary order that would be signed by a judge saying that I'm crazy, that I'm a danger to society, right? Which at the end never happened. But if they had that bullet today, they could use it, right? But they already spent it. So it seems to me like I'm just analyzing the situation from a strategic point of view, right? It seems to me like they misused the bullet, right? They fired too early, which also kind of in my mind, right? And I don't know how to express this, right? Because it's a thought that it's a little bit, how do you say that? I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, right? But the thought is that it feels like the same thing happened when they recalled Penelope, right? I mean, to be completely honest, right? With Penelope, they had me completely under control, completely, right? Like, for many different reasons, right? Like I didn't have as much time to do what I'm doing right now because I was spending time with her and running with her every day, and the physical I would be exhausted because I was running 50 kilometers per week, right? Um, and many other reasons, right? But they had me under complete control with that. But they recalled her, right? Uh, and I believe the recalling of Penelope was also a tactical mistake. Because I mean, maybe they had to recall her at some point, but I think it was too early, right? Like if they had not recalled her, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. So I don't know. It feels like there is something in this pattern, right, that I'm seeing of firing too early, right? I mean, there's something deeper here that I can't really understand. I can't see it, right? But I know it's there. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of an intuition, right? This is not random. There is something behind this pattern of firing too early. Because I've seen this in other instances as well, right? It's not these only two instances. There's other, but I'm not going to describe them because it's not really the purpose of this demo. But the firing early, it's a problem they have. It's a shortcoming they have. I don't know how to say it. And I think there must be something that explains that, right? Because they're not. I mean, they don't do things randomly, right? Like they usually don't make mistakes. So if I see this pattern of them, misusing the bullets, to put it in a way, right, or firing too early, I have to believe there is a deeper reason that I can't see, right? I don't think it's just plain incompetence, because in all these instances, different people have been involved in making those decisions. It hasn't been the same person, right? I imagine. So by the same principle of statistics that I just described, it would be hard. It would be way harder for multiple different people, independent people, to make the same mistake. So there has to be something at a higher level that makes that mistake possible. And I don't know what it is. And that is puzzling me, and it's been puzzling me for 3 days. But I don't know. I'll keep thinking about that. So that's it. That's the situation. Now I want to talk about a little bit more about why all this happened, because that's also something that is worth analyzing, right? And also having been able to put a finger on it. So all this started because the Venezuelan informant that works with Diosdado Cabello told me last week that they were going to trigger an IRS action against me to freeze my bank account. And this idea sparked in their operational plans, because in a demo, I think it was demo 86, I have to check the number, but 86 or 85, I made a slight comment saying, if I think I was talking about the divorce, right? The supposed divorce. And I said something along the lines of, if I run out of money, I won't be able to fight them, right? So they thought, oh, is that true? Well, now we're going to trigger an IRS action against you. So I should probably explain a little bit more, what would that action be, right? Because I know that everything that I say, they will weaponize it. So I'll explain here what it means. So during all my life, all the times that I had to file a tax return after I started working in 3 different countries, right, including Canada and the US, I've always filed my tax returns on time before the deadline, and I've paid my taxes. It's never been an issue, right? I've never had a collection notice or an action from the IRS, like nothing like that, right? Or from Revenue Canada. Well, there was one instance in which the network triggered a supposed audit from Revenue Canada, but that was to insert Don Robart is the name of the supposed accountant, right, in Canada. And that was introduced by Lolo and Derek, who are friends with my former partner. But anyhow, I digress. So during my entire adult life, I've always been consistent in filing my tax returns on time. including last year, that was particularly challenging, right? Because I mean, previously I thought I could use accountants, right? I had an accountant always, right? That would prepare the tax return. But then last year, I realized that the accountants were working for them, and they were making intentional mistakes. Like, for example, Veronica Sanchez misspelled my address in my tax return, so the IRS would send all my correspondence to Diana Cooley, the agent, the Mexican agent that lives in front of my house, right? And this was an intentional mistake, I'm sure, because Diana Cooley is an agent, right? And she's recording cameras intercepting my downlink multiple times. Right? So let me show you. If I go to 2302, sorry, this is the other house. This is 26714. Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. Right. So this is my house at Valley Side, and Diana Cooley's house is this one. Uh, 26715, Valley Side Drive, Katy, Texas 77494. I'm going to mark it here. This house, right? So the rules is, if the IRS triggers an audit, they will send the notices to Diana Cooley, who will not return them to the IRS, but she will keep them, right? So the IRS thinks that I received the notice, but I will not know that I received the notice, and then the IRS could trigger an action based on that I was unresponsive, right? That's the rules. Yes. So Veronica Sanchez was an accountant introduced to me by Marcos Castillo, and he told me that she was his sister, right? Which I don't think is true, but that's what he told me, so I trusted her, right, with my financial information. And when she prepared my tax return of 2022, she made this mistake that I believe was intentional. So anyhow, in 2023, when I prepared the tax return for tax year 2023, I could not go to an accountant because I already was aware of the situation and how they were controlling everything in my surrounding. Right? So I was not going to put myself in that situation. So what I did, I bought a computer, a small microcomputer in Amazon that is bugged. Right? And I want to say that that computer is heavily bugged. And I used it, I installed an accounting software on it, and I prepared my own taxes. For the tax year 2023, so I prepared the taxes on the calendar year 2024, but this was for tax year 2023. It was a simpler tax return because I only had income that came from transactions related to the RSUs that I got from Twitter, right, from Elon Musk. When Elon Musk bought the company, they forced a conversion of all the Twitter stock into cash. So they made that payment to me, right? He bought by force all the stock, right? That's how he took the company private. So I received that income. I was unemployed because after that they let me go, right? To deprive me from the possibility of having income, so I could not fight them. But it was an easier tax return, so I could do it. Okay, but what happened is on 2024, right? On the calendar year 2024, I was forced to leave that house because I saw the level of surveillance and harassment that they were doing with all these agents surrounding the house. And I bought this house, right? But to do that, I had to liquidate all my savings, right? I had to liquidate, not just to do that. There's another detail that I should give you, but I'll tell you that in a second. So I had to liquidate a lot of my savings that I had in stocks and bonds, right? So that was in the calendar year 2024, which now is the tax year 2024, right? So I bought the house and I moved here, right? Then I captured the geo index on September 11. And this is crucial, what I'm going to tell you, right? And I haven't said this before because, I don't want to cause, how do I say this? I know that when this goes public, some people that have, say, their money in companies that are mentioned could panic and take the money out, and this could cause an impact that is hard to foresee, right? So I'm going to tell you what was my experience, right? I'm not going to say anything else but what I saw, okay? So on 2024, after I captured the geo index on September 11th, and I start building technology to analyze it, I see that the company, which is Vanguard, right, that where I had my 401ks of the two employers that I've had for the last, I don't know, uh, between Google and Twitter, it was, I don't know, 12 years, right, of employment. And I had my 401ks there for those employers. So I see in the geo index that Vanguard is a crucial, is heavily under the control, heavily. So that scared me because I anticipated that they could do something that would be legal, right? Like, for example, freeze the retirement accounts, or declare that Vanguard was going out of business or was acquired by another, something, right? Or make just the value of the individual stock of those retirement funds drop to, take away the resources from me, right? I foresaw that they could use that as a weapon. So what I did, I liquidated my 401ks. I didn't need to use the money. Like I already had bought the house, but I liquidated it as as a um, as a preemptive measure, right, to prevent them from harming me financially using the control they have over Vanguard that I was seeing on the geo index. Now, this is a crucial thing that I'm telling you, because it means what I'm telling you is I am, and I was so sure since a year ago when I captured the geo index that the data is so high fidelity that I made a life-changing decision of liquidating my entire 401k for, I don't know, 16 years that I have been saving for 16 years of my life. I liquidated everything in a day because I saw this data. Right? And remember, I'm not just a casual observer. I'm an engineer trained and that worked at Google indexing and ranking for several years, right? With the top engineers in the world in information retrieval systems. And with all that technical background, I could see with such high confidence what I was seeing, that I made this life-changing decision of liquidating my two 401ks in a single day. So this makes my tax return for the tax year 2024 way more complex. Because if you are not, I'm not in retirement age, right? In the US, for you to withdraw these funds, you have to be 60 years old or 55. There's an age, and if you want to, you can withdraw them, but you have to pay a penalty. Okay, and so this complicates the tax return tremendously for me as a person that would be filing it individually without the help of an accountant. Why? Because as I said before, I cannot trust any of the accountants in Katie, right? Because they will do the same thing. They will make an intentional mistake to trigger an action from the IRS. So because of this reason, on the calendar year 2025, when the time comes to file the tax return, I already filed it, okay? But until last week, I had not filed it because I don't have access to an accountant. And if I get an accountant, I'm afraid that they will harm me again, because they have done this with 3 accountants, with Howard Leeds. All the accountants I've had been compromised by them. Howard Leeds, it's an agent of the network. And I can tell you that based on the data that is in the geo index. Don Roberts in Canada, it's an agent of this network. And Veronica Sanchez made this intentional mistake, and she's an agent, and her office is marked in the index, right? So I can't get an accountant. And the tax return is super complicated because it's high value transactions, right? I liquidated, I think, I don't know, I can't recall the number, right? But it was over $1 million in retirement funds, between the retirement funds and the stock that I had left, right? So it could be high liability. And also it has the added complexity that I'm withdrawing early from the 401ks, right? So I did not have a way to prepare the tax return confidently. And on top of that, the deadline for filing the tax return was April 15. And the network removed my son from the home. They kidnapped him on March 28. So my son being kidnapped, and I being without access to an accountant that I can trust, put me in a situation in which I could not file the tax return on time. And then after the deadline had passed and they started harassing me with the courts and with the psychiatric evaluation motions and all that, my focus had been in getting my son back. No, I had not had a chance to file that. So anyhow, I thought that, the IRS usually, I mean, they by definition, they are aggressive, right? Because it's a tax collection agency. They have to be aggressive because people normally wouldn't like to pay taxes, right? I mean, it's not something that you would enjoy having to take money out of your pocket, right? So they have to be very aggressive. And this is important with something I'm going to say about the Forms 211, right? Because it's an inconsistent behavior that the IRS is aggressive in collecting taxes, but is not aggressive pursuing financial crimes and tax evasion, right? It's a fundamentally inconsistent application of their charter, right? Like their mission. But anyhow, I thought, right, during this process, these few months, that because I have never been late in filing a tax return, and it's only been a few months, I didn't think that an action could be triggered. But the Venezuelan informant told me they are going to trigger an action, right? And they're going to freeze your bank account. Which, it would be really unfair, but as you can see, nothing that they do is fair, right? Like you can see in the courts, right? I had a recording of the petitioner saying that the litigation was bad faith and the thing did not get admitted because I did not lay the predicate, right? Or, there is a recusal motion, it doesn't matter. They go and fabricate a fake order and insert it in the docket fraudulently, right? And then claim that that's the order and make money demands, which is wire fraud. So, so because of all that, I could not trust that the IRS was going to, make the reasonable steps, right? Or take the reasonable steps. I mean, even the notices, right? It's possible the notices are being sent to Diana Cooley, right? If they send me a notice, they probably sent it to Diana Cooley, so I did not get it, right? Or, like the most interesting mailman in the world, and the other mailman, well, that's a male woman. It's an African-American woman. The male woman of Valley Drive, they both mark my two houses as vacant. So I cannot get mail, right? And they do this intentionally precisely to put me in this situation. So what I'm trying to say is that it was a situation that was high risk, right? So that's why on the weekend, what I did, I said, well, I have no option. I have to prepare this tax return by myself with the tools I have. And I spent the whole weekend preparing the tax return, and I did it to the best of my knowledge and abilities. And, I checked the results and the final outcome, the final forms that I filed. I checked them, I'm not lying, probably 50 times, okay? And I could not find any mistakes. If there are mistakes, I'm a human. It's possible, right? There's tiny mistake, but I spot check everything, and it seems to be perfect. And I also made the payment in full for the amount of tax that I owed for those transactions that I described before in 2024, and for the penalties incurred for not filing in time, and for the interest incurred for not paying on April 15. So I made the full payment of everything, all my tax liability, including the late filing penalties and the interest on the amount on the liability due on April 15 and on the penalties, right? So there's no possibility that the IRS can argue that I made an incomplete payment or something like that, right? I think I overpaid. I put a correction factor on top, right? How did I put the correction factor on top? There were deductions that I could take that I did not take on purpose, right? So I to intentionally overpay, right? So that's why I was logging into Vanguard, right? And that's why, and all this is relevant because that's the reason why they took the desperate measure of doing this on that day, right? Because they know already, because I said it in the demo, that I know they're going to trigger an action with the IRS, right? And they know that I have to log into Vanguard to be able to download the forms that have the numbers that I have to use to prepare the tax return. I can't prepare the tax returns, if I don't download these 1099 forms from Vanguard, Fidelity, and Chase, in my case, right? But what is interesting to me is that within 60 seconds after I logged in into Vanguard, they started doing this, which tells me that they have automation with Vanguard, right? Because just sniffing the MAC address 2310, I mean, John Miko cannot see that I'm talking to Vanguard, right? Just by looking at the MAC address, he can't tell that. He needs to get the MAC address and ship it to the house in front of him, the Grace, and then they have to get the downlink, capture a lot of bytes or samples, and then brute force it, and then in a few minutes they would be able to see that I'm talking to Vanguard, right? But this process would take, if they're using a tremendous amount of computing power, this process would take, I don't know, minutes at least, right? And at the minimum, maybe hours. But the fact that the response was so fast, right, within 60 seconds, tells me that the information flowed the other way around. Vanguard or somebody at Vanguard told them he's logging in, right? And because of how fast this happened, this had to be automated. Right? I don't think it was a person watching, right? I think they have an automation, an integration with a system that is provided directly or indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly by Vanguard. And remember, I liquidated my holdings on Vanguard last year, weeks after I captured the geo index. Weeks, in a matter of weeks. So it seems to confirm, right, what I saw in the data. Is what I'm saying. What I saw in the data almost a year ago. And Vanguard has the valley marker so in those forms, the forms that I downloaded, I ingested them into the pipeline, and the forms got flagged because they have the name marker in the address valley, and the addresses are marked in the geo index, right? Now it's an interesting case because it's the entire town is called Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. So I'm being a lot of debugging on that area. But I'll make another demo about that. I think this is the place to talk about this. Yes. So that is what triggered all this, right? Now, another thing that happened recently is, so this was this morning, right? So I made previously a couple of demos in which I mentioned how they changed the names of some of these agents so that my technology could not see the real names. So like Joel Grates in the registration of the house was changed by a name that looked like somebody from the Middle East. And John Miko, his name was changed by the name of somebody who is Agent Bonner, supposedly, and a Chinese woman. But these are deception techniques, right? So I could not make the connection that they were both Cisco employees with S, which ties them together, right? And now this video ties them together even more. But in those demos, I mentioned, right, that how the deception works, and also the deception with Michael Cohen. I think this was in the demo M4 or M5. No, M4 or M5 was when I recorded the Docker hood, the question Docker hood in Rose Lane that is buffering him. But then in the next demo after that, I mentioned how the deception at the gas station worked, right? To also obscure or downplay his role. So all these led me to reconfigure because the pipeline had an assumption that was that this house, as a metadata that I had in the pipeline, that this house at 2310 was acquired in June 2024 because I tried to buy that house. That's how I know that, right? I couldn't buy it. I put an offer. It got rejected, and the offer of the supposed Agent Bonner was accepted. But so I had hard coded into the pipeline that was Agent Bonner, that house. I mean, the register owner. But with all this obscuring of the names in the houses surrounding my house, the anti-manipulation pipeline flagged that this might not be the case. So that metadata got removed in a way, right? It got deactivated, to put it in a way. And that event in the pipeline, in the data pipeline, triggered the flagging of another house in Katy that is registered to John Miko. So I went there this morning and I recorded the session, and this became demo M6. And this is posted on YouTube, right? So if you go to the channel of Cold Mobiles P6, sorry. Yeah, this demo over here, right? So I went to that house, and the address is 3950 Amber Wing, Amber Wing Way. Let's look it up. And it's obviously, right, like if you look at the layout, right, it's in a cul-de-sac, it's the last house, right? It's buffered, right, in this signature way that they have. I'm trying to. For some reason, it's not working, the Zoom. Okay. Let me double check the address in case. Yeah, 6950 Amber Wind Way, Katy, Texas. This one. Right. So you can see, right? It's in a cul-de-sac. It's buffered by this lake. It has no back neighbors, right? So this is the signature deployment for important agents. So I went there, and it's recorded in video. The journey to the home, and some of the cars that were following me are recorded here as well. And also important to note the following, right? If you go to Spy Health and enter that address, you will see that the house is marked in the index with a super high paramilitary score, right? 3.1, so 3 million points, right? And the actual communication point is on the back of the house. So, definitely this is him, right? This is John Miko, the one from Cisco. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So now in this video, there's a couple of interesting things. One is that this neighborhood, like you can see the layout, right? It's a very secluded area, like, and I don't know how to articulate this, right? But and I don't know if this will be an experience for everybody, right? But at least here in this area in Katy, these secluded areas are areas that normally see no traffic. Like if normally, I'm saying normally because if you're being targeted, of course they're going to be passing cars in front of your house every minute if they need to, right? But normally in these streets that are secluded like this one, it's a cul-de-sac, it goes nowhere, right? And the entire area is very secluded. You can see that by the buffer zones, right? Like you can see that it's surrounded by lakes, and like it's not an area of easy access, right? It's not next to a highway or anything like that, right? Like if you look at the bigger picture, right? There's no major roads leading to that place. And the time, so this was on a Monday at 6 a.m., right? So my intuition tells me that I should have not seen maybe not even a single running car in that street. But interestingly, if you watch the video, that area was buzzing because they were following me very aggressively, right? So there was a guy that appeared in a jeep, I think, and he was like watching me, like what I was, an Amazon delivery guy, which is really a 7 agent, was following me for like 10 minutes until I got to the house, and then he stopped in the house, right, and supposedly deliver a package. I imagine the package is a signal, right? Whoever he gave that package to has to know, hey, you've been compromised, right? So it could be a TTP, right? A way to use Amazon delivery person to inform an agent that they've been compromised. I imagine the signal is whatever the content of that package, right? It would be interesting to see if there was really an Amazon delivery schedule for Agent John Miko this morning, right? I mean, if the delivery was real, right? Because if it's not recording in Amazon systems, then you can see that it's a TTP. But you can see in the video, and I invite people to watch that video, that they were following me very aggressively in a way that it's unusual for that area and for that time of the day and that day of the week. But that's not the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing, I think, is here on the minute 23:29. You can see, like, I don't know if you can see it here, right? Let me put a marker on this so you can see it. So you can see it better, right? I'm going to mark the area of the video that you should be looking at, right? This area. Okay, and I'm going to do it again. So look at that car, right? That is a police patrol. And you can see how he's intercepting me from the right and positioning himself just in front of me, right next to me. I believe his hope was that I would pass next to him, right? And then he wouldn't stop me for some reason, right? But I did not pass him. I stayed behind him. So when I did that, at some point, he took his head. I think you can see it here. He took his head out of the vehicle. Look, I think he will do it here. You see? And he started looking at me, right? And like, remember, I filed a federal lawsuit alleging that this network is using the full share police department to harass me and to follow me, right? And you see it here. Like, he intercepted me in this way, positioned himself in front of me, hoping that I would pass him. And then when I don't pass him, he sticks his head out of the window and starts looking at me. I mean, the impression I got from this sequence when I saw him, we locked eyes, right, eye to eye. The impression I got is that he wanted to stop me, even though I was behind him. But I think he didn't do it because I would challenge that in court, right? Like, I mean, how can a police officer? I don't know. Maybe they can. I don't know if it, but I think it shows targeting, right? Like, if I'm behind, so far away, for what reason he possibly stop me, right? I mean, he cannot say that I was speeding because he was ahead of me. He cannot measure that. He doesn't have a Doppler gun in the back of the patrol car. He cannot say that I was driving erratically because I'm on my lane and I'm waiting for him to pass, right? He cannot say that I had a broken light or a missing. So I don't know, but the feeling I got is that he was thinking about stopping me, even though I was behind him, but he didn't do it, right? And then he started driving slowly, like, giving me all the chances to pass him. And I imagined that if I didn't pass him, he would stop and stop me for driving too slow, right? I imagine. So what I did, I got into a gas station, which is a private parking lot, and I stopped the car. And after he left, then I left the gas station and kept driving back to my home. I was coming home. I already did what I was there to do. I was there to record the plates and the house of Agent Miko, John Miko, right? That was my goal. But okay, but now let's talk about more. Let's go back to the higher picture, right? Because I said this in the previous demo. I said that if they push the narrative with the IRS to, weaponize the IRS and this is why I said, I mean, I think I need to be clear on this, right? I'm not saying weaponized because I mean, I had to pay the taxes and I had to file the tax return, but in the circumstances that I am, it's a difficult thing for me to do, right? But all things being considered, it would be within the powers of the IRS to trigger to send me a letter, right, saying file your tax return, right? And if I don't respond to multiple letters, they have an internal process that dictates that they could trigger an action, right? But it's a process they have to follow. They can do this out of the blue, right? In 3 days, they have to send me multiple notices, right? But if they follow that process, right, they would be within the right to do it. But the reason why I say that it would be weaponizing the IRS is because, remember, I filed more than 50 Form 211 reports to the enforcement department of the IRS accusing the key players of this network of committing tax fraud and tax evasion using cryptocurrency. And they haven't addressed even a single one of the Form 211s, right? On the substance of the forms. They dismiss them procedurally because that's what the network does. They use procedure, right? And in the previous demo, I told them in a recorded demo, I mean, not the IRS, the network, right? I told them, if you push this, I'm going to use this against you because, I mean, you gave me the geo index, you gave me the data to prove what you're doing, right? And if you're going to go talk to the IRS to harm me, you are going to open a door for me to talk to the IRS about what you're doing, right? In a way, you are poking a bear, right? The same institution that you are trying to use to harm me could also harm you because you're committing serious crimes, right? Financial crimes. But anyway, the informant told me on Friday that they were moving forward with that and that it was imminent, that if I didn't take action, they would freeze my bank accounts, right? Which effectively put me out of the game, right? So that's why on the weekend, I prepared the tax return, filed it, and made the payment in full of all the amount due and the penalty and the interest, right? So there's no reason for any of that. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I executed on what I told them, right? Now that I know that they were, poking that bear, what I did, I created a new book, and I want to introduce you to that book in this session. So this book is a book that is available in Amazon, right? You can look it up. I think you can look it up like this. Yes. Right. So I created a book. Let me tell you what this is, right? I created a book, right, that it's printed. There's a printed version that you can buy. And I'm not doing this to sell you the book. You can download the book for free, and I'm going to tell you in a minute where to download it. But this book contains the transcripts of all these demos, right? So far, because I didn't have enough time on the weekend to complete the entire book, but I already put like 20 of the demos, right? In fact, I think there is a way here that I can do like I can get a free sample. Yes, you can treat the free sample. Okay. So the book starts with an open letter to the commissioner of the IRS explaining how I've been sending reports to the IRS that have been ignored, right? And it has the link to the actual form 211.org, which has the full master form 211 with all, the key players ranked in the form, right? And then it includes the letters of these procedural rejections of the submissions signed by Anna Hirji, who supposedly is the associate director of the whistleblower office, right? And I have multiple of these letters with different dates and different file numbers. So I only attached 4, right? Because I'm not going to fill the book with letters. But just to make the point that this is a systemic problem, right? It's not one thing that they rejected. But then the book contains the transcripts of these demos, in which I detail the financial crimes, the network routers, the surveillance, like all the crimes, right? But interestingly, now let me. This is a good place to show you, right? So if you go to the website, so there is a second website that I haven't mentioned. That is the files.com. And this website, sorry, it's more for citizens, right, than law enforcement. And it's just to give you links to resources. Like, for example, if you click on resources, it has important information of, like, how to contact the FBI, for example, right? The numbers and the websites, for important law enforcement agencies that you could approach. And it's internationalized in all these languages. And for example, if you look at it in French, I think I internationalized it to the point that the authorities that would be listed would be the authorities in France. Resources, right? No, I think I did not do that at the end. And let me see. Spain is another good example. Yeah, no, it always has API, but I'm going to internationalize this more to a local level, right? So it's going to list the main intelligence agency of each country that speaks that language, right? So, for example, if you click on French, it would say the equivalent to the FBI in France and in Quebec, right, in Canada. But anyhow, in this website, there is let's go back to English. And if you speak Chinese, you can also get it here, right, in Chinese. So if you click on download, this first link over here, it will take you to a Google Drive folder that has the audiobooks and also has the PDF versions of the books. And this one that says Volume 4, an IRS whistleblower formal disclosure to the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service, this one has the book that I'm describing, that I created over the weekend as a retaliatory response to what they were planning to do with the IRS. And I'm showing you the PDF version, right? Because if you see what the demo M6 that I recorded this morning is already in the book. Like the transcript, so as I do the mobile demos, I record with the inside camera, the things that I'm observing, right? And you can see it here. So John Miko, in a space of only like 2 hours and a half, went from being completely hidden in the shadows under the identity of supposedly Agent Bonner to being published in the book that it's going to be sent to the IRS alongside the Form 211s that I'm going to send from now forward, right? So this book is going to become part of my disclosure package, my standard disclosure package to the Form 211s, right? And this is something that they cannot ignore easily, right? Because I mean, they can ignore it for now, but at some point, I'm going to succeed at contacting a journalist. All I need to do is contact one journalist, only one. I only need one journalist, right? After I'm able to put this in front of 98% of the planet, the IRS commissioner has to take action. They can't ignore this forever, right? So, but again, like this is something that came to exist because they were trying to harm me with the IRS. And this is what I was saying in the previous demo, that is generally not a good idea to try to harass the person that you gave the database of your financial crimes to. Because that person is going to turn that around and is going to use that database to harm you. It's just pure logic. I don't know how to articulate it anymore. Like I've said this so many times. It's the same thing that happened with the law firm, right? I mean, yes, you took the child, but look what I've done with it. You gave me a weapon. Now Troy Pickett is my weapon. I don't know if they realize this, but Troy Pickett is really my weapon. And maybe this is a good point to talk about this, right? I mean, he's not my legal adversary. He's my weapon, right? If you look at this, why is he my weapon? Well, because he committed fraud against 2 courts, and there's written documents with his signature that prove that he committed fraud, right? So he has high legal liability on federal crimes that carry sentences of 20 years per count, up to 20 years per count. and he has at least 5 possible counts of the same wire fraud crime. It could be 100 years in prison, right? And the people that collaborate with him are co-conspirators, right? So if I'm able to demonstrate connection, you know, so he's really a weapon for me. And he's a weapon that I can use in both federal cases because he's connected to the two sides of this chart. So you see this chart is split in two halves, which represent the two. Let me tell you this. The chart was created not to split the people in the lawsuits. No. That happened afterwards. The chart was created organically based on data and observations that are factual, right? And things that are demonstrable, that I have proof, that I can prove in court. But after I created the chart, I realized that the players organically lined up on the two lawsuits. Like there's a set of people that work for the PayPal mafia, like Joel Gray, John Miko, who are on the technical side, right? Intercepting the downlink of Masala connection. Phil Denny, right? Doing this digital harassment with the emails and the HOA. And there's people that fall under the other lawsuit because they've been depriving me from my civil rights using the color of a state law, right? And I'm talking about the lawyers, right? So you see, like this, creating this chart allowed me to visualize my legal strategy, right? And Troy Pickett, you can see he's in the middle because he is a connective tissue between the two sides. So I will deploy him as a weapon on both lawsuits, right? And he committed serious crimes, serious federal crimes. These are not these are not Texas criminal law, right? We're talking about federal criminal law. So this is why I was saying that, generally speaking, it's not a good idea to harass using state institutions the person that you gave the database that proves your crimes to, because that person is going to turn that situation around and is going to use it against you using that database, right? And this has happened multiple times, but they don't learn the lesson. They keep trying, right? So anyhow, the book, that formal whistleblower disclosure addressed to the commissioner of the IRS is now a printed book in Amazon with an ISBN number. And of course, I'm going to register with the Library of Congress, right? That is the obvious next step. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to be more clear. Yeah, so I already talked about most of these points. There's another point about, this one I'm on the fence. Okay, yes, I didn't talk about this. Okay, so when the informant told me, right, in that communication exchange that I had, I mean, I'm gonna say this because it's a funny story, right? So let me show you in the map. It's an example of developing a countermeasure using their own weapons against them. Let's see where Costco is, more or less. Okay, so the weapon that they use is something that I call swarming. Okay, and the idea is because they have, remember, thousands of vehicles, right? So it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 vehicles against me, right? And when I say these things, I know I don't want to sound like, but this is what they do, right? They control this area, and because they have so many vehicles with this Chinese espionage machine mounted on the car, they use it, they weaponize it, right? Imagine a city. If I can give you an analogy of what this feels like being on the receiving end, imagine a city. Imagine that you go to New York for a day, okay? And you are there visiting. You are a stranger in the city. And there's a bunch of taxis in New York running around the city and Uber cars, right? Imagine the following situation. Imagine that you realize that all the taxis in New York and all the Uber cars are really coordinated by an app that is pretty much like Uber. And they are all moving around in a way that makes them be able to surveil you, right? So that's what it feels like on the receiving end. Now, the swarming technique is the following: if I take a route that it's a new route, or that they don't know what I'm going to do, right? And they need to be following me and intercepting me ahead, as the police officer did this morning in the video that I showed you, where he stuck his head out of the window. So they need to be able to position themselves ahead of me, because that's the only way to follow me, right? Because they don't know if I'm going to take a right or a left in the next intersection, unless they have a car ahead of me and a car behind me, right? So the swarming technique is the following: when they don't know where I'm going to go, what they do, if I'm in the highway, they overflow the exit that I'm going to take. So if they see that I'm going to take this exit in the highway, for example, they overflow the exit with, I don't know, 200 cars at the same time. And that creates a queue of vehicles that are like basically moving very slowly to pass through that exit, right? And that makes me, and they, of course, when they do this, I can see, and I measure this with the system, it's measured, right? Like I'm not guessing. The movement of the cars is not organic, meaning they make them intentionally move slower than they would to create an additional delay. The whole intention of doing this is to keep me there for at least, say, 1 minute, 2 minutes, to give enough time to the system to reroute other cars so they could get ahead at the end of that intersection and intersect me, for example, here, right? Or to join the Texas 99 in this example, so they can start following me on this leg, right? So it's just a way to create an artificial delay. That's what they do. That's the swarming technique, okay? On the highway exits. So what I did, I came up with a countermeasure that I look at it after the fact with the results that I got, and I think this was a super good move, right? So this is what I do. When I see the swarming happening, forming, because I can see it forming, right, from maybe 500 feet away or 600 feet away, because I have all these cameras, right, and I can see 360 degrees, right? I can see how the cars are all moving to make this swarming happen, right? So what I do instead of exiting on the exit, I park my car safely, right, in the how do you say, in the safety zone on the right of the in the US, right, because our cars are driving that. But on the safety, I don't know what you call that in Spanish we say ombrillo, like in the shoulder, right, on the shoulder of the road. Like, if you and this is not an illegal thing to do. Like, if you have a situation like, I don't know, your glasses fell off on the floor, you have to safely park your car on the shoulder and address the situation so you can keep driving safely, right? But when I park the car, in a very specific place at the exact entrance of the exit, right? But on the outside of the exit. So I'm still on I-10 in this example, right? I did not take the exit. I made it look as if I was going to take the exit, but immediately after the exit, I parked on the shoulder. And I have the cameras recording, right? And the agents are in this swarming position in which they're forced to drive very slow. So all their faces get recorded, right? All the agents participating in the swarming get recorded with the faces. And you have to see the video because, and I think I already uploaded it to the storage bucket, because they look at the cameras with with like disgust, like, like they cannot avoid looking at the cameras, right? Because they know their faces are getting recorded, and there's nothing a spy hates more than their face getting recorded. That's why I've never been able to see the face in these cameras of Agent John Miko, right, or Joel Gray, because they never show their face in front of the camera. They work in the shadows, right? That's the term they like to use. So this countermeasure to the swarming technique is amazing, because then I can get 100 faces, right, in a matter of 2 minutes, right? It's a gold mine. But also, more importantly, I use that as an opportunity to receive NFSC exchange. Why? Well, because even if they form the swarm, they cannot possibly have all the cars in the swarm. So what I did, I coordinated with my gateway people to pass on that moment on that exit, right, and to give me the NFC data that I was trying to get. And because they create this chaos in that exit, they cannot possibly control all the license plates. Of course, we took measures that would, even if they have all the license plates of that exit, they would not be able to figure out who the person that gave me the data is. But that's how we did it. So it's an example of using the chaos they produce themselves against them, right? Um, and this is one of those things that I know there's more here to understand, but I haven't been able to see it. But intuitively, I can tell you that it feels like it's a matter of energy, right? The amount of energy that they are putting into creating that, like think about it, right? To move 500 cars in a space of 2 minutes to completely block an exit in the driveway, right? That, I mean, from a purely engineering point of view, it's a lot of energy to, like gasoline, monetary investment in those vehicles. If you add the time of all those 500 people, right, that you would need to position them there at that exact moment, right? We're talking about thousands of man hours. It's a lot of energy. And the thought is something like such high amount of energy cannot be managed, right? It creates chaos. And that chaos can be exploited against them, right? It's something like that. But I can't really put my finger on I cannot really form the idea right now. But it's something like that. It's in those situations of high energy, there's opportunities for me to exploit, right? And I'm able to recognize that quickly on the fly. Like, for example, the IRS, right? That's another example. The IRS thing that the informant warned me about on Friday. It's a situation of high energy. Why? Well, because we're talking about more than $1 million of energy, right? I had to liquidate more than $1 million of my savings last year because of the Vanguard situation, right? And the potential penalties, right? Or the potential consequences if they freeze my account. Like, it's a high energy situation, but it is the same high energy situation that makes it dangerous to them. Now there is a book that has all the transcripts and is addressed directly to the commissioner of the IRS. So yeah, high energy situations equal chaos, and chaos equals opportunity. I think that's more or less the train of thought. Okay, and this is also a good point to talk about this, right? The crypto ATMs. So, and this is related to the IRS and the form to, because the crypto economy that they are using, this parallel economy based on crypto and the crypto routers described in the website and in the books, it's a parallel economy that they have, unregulated, untaxed, and this gives them an unfair advantage, right? If a person that is targeted, how can a person that is targeted, that is paying their taxes like me, right? Every dollar I've made in my life, I pay taxes for that dollar. But the dollars that Diosdado Cabello is using, besides the point that the dollar has been created illegally, right, by the drug trade. But beyond that, that dollar is not paying taxes. So is a dollar of illegit origins, and also that does not pay taxes. So how can I compete against that, right? It puts me inherently from the beginning in a disadvantaged position. But anyhow, the signal I want to give you is that if you look at the density of crypto ATMs in the US, crypto ATMs that are marked in the UA index, this is a signal that I use to find hops of the network, like Katie. Like Katie has an unusually high concentration of crypto ATMs marked in the UA index compared to a non-controlled area by the network. Right? So if you're the FBI, if you work for the FBI and you want to understand where is that they keep the other prisoners, all you have to look for is for the density of crypto ATMs that are marked in the UA index. And the areas of high density, those are the prisons, right? Those are the areas where they keep the prisoners, right? And this is a good segue to tell you about this huge bug that they have in the pipeline, right? In their pipeline. So their geo-index, and here I'm going to get a little bit technical, right? But it's important to tell you this because it could lead to find other targets and to find other things, right? So they have an indexing pipeline. Actually, I'm not gonna. I have to think more about this. I don't know, because it's a piece of information that could be dangerous if they have it. I apologize for saying that. Let me think about this if I should say this or not. So I'm going to move to the next point. Brett and Heather Williams. So Brett and Heather Williams are the people that sold me the house at 26714 Valleyside Drive, Katy, Texas, on 2014. That house is bought and was bought from the moment I bought it, right? And the keys, the Venezuelan intelligence had the keys, copies of the keys of the house, right? All these years. So they could enter the house whenever they wanted. So obviously these people have to be agents, right? The way they portrayed the situation to me when I bought the house was that they were going through a divorce. And she was the vice principal in the Schaffer School, I think. And I learned, is somebody that works for Shell Oil. Of course, because Shell, Diosdado Cabello, it makes sense. But anyhow, I went and looked at the divorce decree. And there's several things that are worth noting, right? One is that it was handled by the 505 court district, the same court that handled the divorce between my former partner and Salvador Mendez, or Andres Salvador Mendez. I don't know which one is the real name. And the same court that then granted the modification of the divorce decree on 2021 so a passport for their child could be secured as a preemptive measure to potentially do other things in a situation like this. It's the same court. Okay. Now, another important thing is, and I put these documents already in the Google storage, Google Cloud Storage bucket, and you can see that here in the folder, right? So if you go to court evidence, there is a folder that says Brett Allen Williams and Heather Gale. And then you can see here the actual copy of the docket, right? One thing to note is the misspelling of the name, Brett. And this is that misspelling, intentional misspelling technique. The name is not, I mean, in one of the two places have to be misspelled. In the property records appears with two T's, B-R-E-T-T, but here he appears with only one T. And you can argue, well, it was a truncation because of the length, but no, that's not the reason. Anyhow, you can see the judgment, you can see that he works for Shell Oil, and for another company called, it's another oil company. Occidental Petroleum, this one, which is also flagged in the index. So I don't know. It's a data point, right? Because it's possible. I don't have a way to prove this, but it sounds a lot like the divorce between the former partner and Salvador Mendez or Andres Salvador Mendez. It's the same court, the same time frame, the same. So it could be another sham divorce. Just as a preemptive measure, because I haven't had the time to debug this, I included the attorney of record. Is this file? Right? It's Susan Myers. And that address where she is also marked in the index. So I don't know. It could be a good lead. I don't know. Okay. Yes. So I think those are all the items that I had for today. Except there's to give you an idea of what I was going to say. I'm not going to say, but there's a huge indexing bug that they have on their indexing pipeline that created the geo index that I captured on September 11, 2024. And that bug allows me to compute more or less at least how many targets they have in an area. But I don't want to give the actual mechanics of the bug. But if authorities see this, consult with an indexing engineer from Google, because they will be able to see the bug. But there is a bug that is visible. If you look at the GeoIndex files, And the geoindex files, I've saved them, and they're publicly available in this bucket, right? The PayPal Mafia bucket. If you go to this bucket, the PayPal Mafia one, on the root of the bucket, there is a folder called the geoindex. This one, right? And in this file, it's a zip file. If you download it, it has all the 30 shards of the file, and it even has a screenshot that I took that day. Let me show you the screenshot. Let me see. Yeah, so you can see it here, right? So this is a screenshot. You can see the time, right? September 11, 24, the year 24, at 4:54 a.m. And this is an example of a query with the precise location of a place where they always intercept me, and you can see the files stored in these research servers and some even in NASA servers and in these Canadian servers of the Canadian Space Agency, right? So they use the servers. I mean, I imagine unknowingly, right? These agencies probably don't know that the servers are being misused for this, right? But they use them to host the files, so the agents can download the files, and the requests don't look suspicious, right? To the FBI, right? If the FBI is monitoring their phones. But I'm showing you the screenshot because the fact that I took the screenshot, I think is very telling, right? I mean, this means that I recognize immediately what this was, because otherwise, why did I take this screenshot? Right? And this has forensic value because it has the timestamp, and this can be cross-referenced with the Google search logs of my account. And you can see that I made this request. Right? But anyhow, in those files that are in that folder that you can download from the PayPal Mafia Google Cloud Storage bucket, if a Google engineer that works in Google indexing look at those files, they will be able to figure out, I'm sure, that they will be able to figure out what is the indexing bug. I don't need to spell it out. They can figure it out. And this indexing bug is so fundamental that it allows you to see where they have the other prisoners. So it could be a good lead. Yes, I'm gonna, maybe I'll say more about the bug, but I don't think that I think I need to think about that a little bit more. So I'm going to close this session for now. And I'll keep debugging these things, and I'll keep you updated. And of course, needless to say that the transcript of this demo is going to go immediately into the book for the IRS, the one that is addressed to the commissioner of the IRS. So you see now the game has changed because of this dynamic they created by trying to weaponize the IRS. Because now, when I find things using the data, they are going to go straight to the IRS via this method, right? To the IRS and to the news reporters that I'm going to try to contact. So it's a completely different game. So with that, I'm going to close this session, and I wish you good night, and I'll see you on the next one.